Good morning, everybody. I'm going to present this work in progress that we are doing with Pablo Gracia and Julia Gervini. I think some of you know them because they presented in this workshop last year. So what I'm presenting now is an study, it's a cross-national perspective comparison of adolescents' sleeping time and patterns. And it's a continuation of other studies that we have done with Pablo and some colleagues. And okay, the first study we did with Pablo and our colleagues from UK and from Finland, we tried to analyze the time use of children and adolescents, but we compare all the activities they do, and we compare the time with parents, time alone, and so on. Then we found in this first study some interesting issues about gender differences, and we published a second paper that it was more based on differences between boys and girls. And we compared the three countries again, because we have these three partners, well, these two partners and Pablo, and we compare Spain, Finland, and UK. So after these two papers, we realized that we talk about general time use of adolescents and gender differences, but then we found one activity that for us was very interesting, that was the sleeping time of children and adolescents. And we decided to partner with Julia, that she's more a chronobiologist, and we are trying to analyze the sleeping time of the adolescents. Why we are trying to do that? We are trying to do that because from previous literature, we know that teenagers' sleeping patterns is a critical predictor of health and well-being. And there is also an evidence of cross-country variation in total time of children spent sleeping, which seems in a certain way associated with the school starting time. And this is this previous study by Gary P. and some other authors that we will see later a little bit, because it's the study that has inspired a little bit our study, and we will see it later. So we know that there is an evidence on timing of sleep is scarce, especially across cross-national contexts and considering a specific time use mechanisms. So as I said before, our paper is more or less inspired by this paper by Gary P. and some authors from different countries, that they analyze the total time of sleeping and the time they go to bed and the time they wake up in a total of 24 countries, from mainly from Europe. And we can see here that there are variations, interesting variations from this is the time during school days, and there is variation between the country that children sleep less, that is Poland with 7 hours 47 minutes, and the one where children sleep more, that is the Flemish Belgium, that they sleep a little bit more than 9 hours. And also there are differences in the time that children go to bed and the time that they wake up. So the difference with this study and our study is that this study uses a survey on children and adolescents, a general study, and where they ask the time they go to bed and the time you wake up. And we know in some different ways that to study time use of population, the best way to do that is to use time diaries, not direct questions, because sometimes the direct questions are a little bit, they have some limitations, because sometimes the answers are the more normalized, so there is some issues about the direct question. So we decided to use time diary data. that we have, for the ones who are not familiar with time use diaries, the time use diaries in general, what they do is the respondents have to fill a 24 hours diary where they report all the activities done in a certain way. The most common way to report the activities is in different intervals. We have an example here of a diary that we have every 10 minutes. You have to say what are they doing, if they are doing something else, where are they, with whom are they, and some other information that can be added. For example, how do you feel? Do you feel stressed or whatever? So time use diaries has been used a lot to study couples time, to study housework in different housework between men and women, but it has been less used to study time use of adolescents. Why? So in some way it has been less studied because diaries of children sometimes are incomplete. But in general, time use studies this is a recommendation by Eurostat, are filled by persons who are 10 years old and older. So we have information from population 10 years old and older. And what we have done here is to study the time use of the adolescents that we consider the respondents between 10 and 17 years old. And the data we have used is data that has been harmonized previously, and we obtained this information from EPUMS 10 News. It's a web page for the ones who don't know EPUMS. EPUMS is a platform, is a project that is where the site is in the University of Minnesota, in the Minnesota Population Center, and they disseminate a bunch of information on census surveys, and one of the surveys that they disseminate is time use surveys. What they have here, they get the surveys that in theory they are from different countries. They are not previously harmonized, although the most of them follow some guidelines provided by Eurostat or some other organizations. What they have done is to harmonize these surveys by time and by place. So you can go there and create your extra. You have to register previously, but the register is very easy. And what you can do that is to create your own variables, to select the samples you want, the variables you want, and it's very, very easy to use it. And then you will get a data set with the text file and the syntax to read this text file in different statistical packages, in SPSS, SAS, R, or Stata. So more concretely, I'm using data from the multinational time use study. And this one uses data from different countries, and they start in the 1960s. You have the information from the 1960s. We have countries with a lot of surveys, some countries that we only have one survey. And we have selected the surveys conducted around year 2020. The average age of as I said before, we have selected children between 10 and 17 years old. And the average age of all the samples is about 15 years old. The samples are more or less biased, 50% on boys, 50% on girls. So what I am going to present here is three different measures. First, I'm going to present the total time of sleeping, then the timing of sleeping in the different countries. And finally, I will present this measure that is considered a lack of sleeping, that there is some agreement, some consensus that sleeping less than 8 hours is not good for health. So there is a minimum hours of sleeping, and below these hours, we can say that it's not good. So we have here the first figure. We have here that it's the total time of sleeping in our 9 countries, sorry. And we have the average hours, minutes of sleeping during a school day and during a non-school day. Here we can see first that we have an outlier that we will see in all the presentation, that is South Korea. That is the country that we have with this SK. That is a really outlier because children in South Korea, they sleep much less than in other countries, according to our data. You can see here the sleeping for school days is a little bit more than 7 hours. I think it's 7 hours 20 minutes, and it increases a little bit around 2 hours in the weekends, in the non-school days. Sorry, because we also consider holidays. With South Korea, the countries are more or less the same. The variation is, we see much less variation if we don't consider South Korea. We have minimums for Spain and Italy. That is around 402, I think, and in the school days. And I think the data is not. I don't know if it's a problem with the. Well, okay, sorry. In Italy and Spain, we have the minimum during the school days, that is the 492 minutes, and in a non-school day, that is 604 minutes, so it's around 10 hours in non-school days. Is the minimum in Italy and Spain, and the maximum we can see that is for the school days is for South Africa and UK, and in the weekends the maximum is for Netherlands, followed by Finland and Hungary. So see, this is the total time of the sleeping in the two type of days. In the second figure, we can see the pattern of the sleeping. These figures represent for boys and girls separately, that we don't see differences between boys and girls in the sleeping time in general. So we are not going to see more graphs with boys and girls separately. And we see here, we can compute from the time use diary the proportion of respondents who are sleeping in the moment of this moment of the day. We can see that there are some moments of the day that almost 100% of the population is sleeping. If you see at 4 a.m. or almost 100%, but there are other times that the proportion is very, very, very low. Here we see is the pattern of the South Africa, that children and adolescents wake up earlier and they go to sleep earlier too. This is the black line. This is one of the patterns, the South African pattern that they do daily pattern is more earlier than the other countries. The opposite is for Spain, that is a red line, that children and adolescents wake up later and go to bed later too. And we also see in Spain this peak for the famous, we can say the famous siesta, that a small increase in the proportion of persons who are sleeping. And then we have, this is not as clear as in the other figures, but we also have the pattern of South Korea, that they wake up earlier, not as earlier as South Africa, but earlier than the other countries, and they go to sleep also later. So they have these two. So we have the early pattern for South Africa, the later pattern for Spain, and South Korea, that is between the two. And for the other countries, more or less, they have the same patterns. In this other figure, we have the sleep offset and the sleeping offset, again for school days. That is the box plot that is more in gray, and for the school days, non-school days, that is darker. And what we see here is there is much more dispersion in not schooling days. In school days, the box are much more narrow, and for the offset, the time they wake up, we see that there is a delay about 2 hours between school days and non-school days. with the exception of South Africa, that is the last column, where they have a more similar pattern. And the time they go to bed, there are less changes between school days and non-school days. So the box for the school days and non-school days, they are more similar. They are more an overload. And again, except for South Africa. And here in this other figure, we present the predicted, we have done some predicted sleeping hours by country. And what we confirm here is there are more or less 2 hours differences between school days and non-school days. We see again this outlier of South Korea in the total time of the sleeping. And then regarding the other countries, we see more or less 3 groups. We have similarities between Spain and Italy. That we will say that are the Southern European countries, that they sleep less, a little bit less than the other countries. Then we have the group of Finland, France, and Hungary. That is the group that is they sleep in a medium position, and the countries that we see more sleeping time, that is Netherlands, UK, and South Africa. This pattern of countries, these 3 groups, is confirmed in this other figure, where we compute the probability of sleeping less than 8 hours. Again, the highest probability of sleeping less than 8 hours is for South Korea, followed by Italy and Spain. Then we have this medium position for Finland, France, and Hungary. And the probability is lower in the other 3 countries. And what we see here is, again, is that there are less changes during the non-school days. And the last figure I'm showing is the probability of being sleeping before midnight. And here the real outlier is Spain, where the probability of being sleeping before midnight is much lower than in the other countries. In Spain, it confirms that children and adolescents in Spain, they are more likely to go to sleep later. And in the other side, we see Hungary and South Africa, where children, for example, for school days, they are almost 100%. The probability is almost 1 to be sleeping at midnight. So finally, to conclude my summary of findings, we see important differences by type of day, school day or not, in the sleeping patterns across country. That these differences are mainly produced by the sleeping offset. And the international comparison shows South Korea, that is an outlier, where the probability of sleeping less than 8 hours is higher. And there is a large sleeping gap between a school and non-school days, but not on a school sleep onset. And then the other particular pattern we will say is for Spain, that is an outlier for in late sleeping time, probably because of cultural particularities, even if the total sleeping time in Spain is very similar to Spain. And then the last particular pattern we see is for South Africa, that is an outlier in early waking up and going to bed time. Future steps we would like to do is analyze the distribution of the activities that children do before going to bed, and try to see if there is some moderation or mediation effect of these activities. If they spend more time 2 hours before going to bed doing some screen time activity or studying or eating, it has some consequences. They have some association relationship with the total time of the sleeping or the pattern of the sleeping. And we would like to examine in time use and socioeconomic predictors of the sleeping. and also to see more focus on the distribution of schooling time characteristics within and between countries. And the other thing we would like to do is also to try to find more countries and see if this pattern that we see for South Africa, that is our representative of Africa, if it's the same in other African countries. And in the same way, if this pattern we see for South Korea can be a particular pattern for the Asian countries, and for example, to use what happened in Japan or what happened in other countries, as Hong Kong, for example, or in China. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Joan, for a great presentation. If there are questions, I suggest that people just can raise the hand and open the micro in the camera if it's possible. And you can also write questions in the chat if you prefer to. You can also make questions in Spanish. I'm sure Joan will be able to answer as well. From my side, I would like to, well, first of all, thank you for coming. I think this very interesting research what you're doing. I'm also happy that maybe this came about because of the second workshop last year. So this is also an added value of the workshop, that we put together people who are working in similar things, but they don't know each other. And this is also, of course, a very important value also of the workshop. I would like to, well, yesterday we mentioned, because we have coordinated, Sandra, Viola, and myself, a special issue in the Journal of Spanish Sociology of Education Review. I can put you here the link if I have copied. I have lost it now. I can take it now and put it. Sorry. And there, what I was presenting was a work where I have, thanks to Julia also, I was trying to understand better what was the starting hours of the schools in Europe, according to the real sun time, not the official clock. Because I believe what you have used in your analysis is the official clock, what is registered in the diaries. But I was thinking maybe you would benefit also for looking at it from the sun time point of view. Okay, not so much the official clock, especially during not the school days. This might be something that gives you some interesting idea. For instance, in Spain, we have, like, in summer we have 2 hours delay from the sun clock, and in winter we have 1 hour. And this would explain that the schools in Spain start a bit later officially, although it's not so late in real terms, and the children wake up later and go to bed later. So I very much discuss in this article the idea that it's a cultural thing. I think it's more a geographical thing. We are most Western country in Europe that has the Central European time. So it's normal that our kids go to bed later, not so much for the social, in my opinion, but for more for the wrong timing. So, but of course, this is an open issue. So so yeah, I think what you do is very interesting, because you are able to also to track the actual sleeping times. For me, it's interesting also to see that Italy and Spain, we have the same pattern of sleeping for children. In this article, what I mentioned, I was comparing also the distribution of activities doing by the Italian and the Spanish population, and we can see that we do exactly the same things as the Italian, basically, but 1 hour later. So they eat at 1, we eat at 2. If they have dinner at 7, we have dinner at 8, and we are like following them like 1 hour later, which is the distance that the sun takes to come, passing through there and passing through here. So I think it's very interesting research what you have done. Is there any questions? Yeah, please, John.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, what you have said, this is the first thing about the daily the light delay. This is something we want to probably to correct the time we are using, just to adapt this it's the clock time we are using, because the time we have in the diaries, but in some way we think that we need to correct for that, and we try to do that using the trimester, or trying to control by the trimester, because it's not the same. Probably the time pattern, the timing pattern in summer than the time in winter, because the hours of sun are different, and probably in certain way it can change a little bit so the weather is different. It can change a little bit the pattern of sleeping. It's a good question that you have. Down. Thank you very much.